Good afternoon. We welcome Secretary Armin Luistro, Brother Armin, and the DepEd family to the finance hearing of the Department of Education's budget, including the National Museum. Has the National Museum always been attached to the DepEd ever since the beginning? But before it was under the office of the President? No.
Ma'am, before 1998, we were under DEX, and then when RA 8492 was passed, we were under OP, but then President Arroyo reattached us to DepEd in 2006.
What's your preference? Where should it belong?
Well, in our heart, we've always belonged to the DepEd family.
You know, your budget will be passed whether you prefer to be under DepEd or not. So, my question is, what if we put all the culture agencies under one roof, under a Department of Culture?
Well, certainly that makes sense.
Including the Philippine High School for the Arts, National Museum. Now, maybe that's the first question. So this will be an unconventional hearing where that's the art and culture, and the creation of the Department of Culture will be the first question I will ask of the Secretary of Education, whether it is advisable or not to do that. The NCCA is simply a commission. So, you know, heads of different agencies are members. But to have a permanent Department of Culture with a Secretary of Culture, with the National Museum, National Historical Commission, NHCP, the Commission ng Wikang Filipino, National Archives, National Library, Cultural Center of the Philippines, Philippine High School for the Arts, which, ano pa?
The Film Development Council.
Film Development Council.
Nayong Pilipino.
Nayong Pilipino. Right now, Nayong Pilipino is under the UT. Just to rationalize it, arts and culture, right? Wouldn't that be great? But you don't have to agree with me, Secretary Luistro, because your budget's approval is not contingent on your affirmative answer. Okay, what do you think of it? Before we proceed to the K-12, since Senator Cayetano is here. My first question was, Pia, before you arrived, even before recognizing Secretary Luistro and the DepEd family, is, has the National Museum always been part of the DepEd family? And of course the question is, the answer is no, because it used to be under the OP. Now, to rationalize all the culture agencies under one roof to have a Department of Culture is a question I posed before Secretary Luistro, if you agree that it would be beneficial, not just to education, but also to the upliftment of culture and arts in our country.
Personally, Your Honor, we have not discussed it, but the sheer number of those small agencies that are culture-related tell me that it is important that we're able to bring them together. At the very least, we will be able to put under an umbrella the cultural roadmap for the country. No? The only thing I'd ask is maybe not the Philippine High School for the Arts, because as a school, I think there could be a connection there and coordination, but at least that's more educational than just pure cultural.
Because Nayong Pilipino is under the OT. NM is under DepEd. All the others are just independent and under a commission which only meets, I don't know how often. But that's something to think about, not something we could do till the end of the year. We recognize Senator Pia Cayetano, we recognize Secretary Armin Luistro. Could you ask the committee secretary to please read into the record the presence of everybody today? Just for the record, they were here before 1 o'clock, except that my DILG finance hearing extended till almost 2 o'clock. So thank you for being early.
Good afternoon. We would like to acknowledge the presence of the following: Secretary Armin Luistro, Yusek Dina Ocampo, Yusek Rizalino Rivera, Asek Jesus Mateo, Asek Tonisito Umali, Asek Elvin Ivan Uy, Director Teresita Insyong, Early Childhood Community Development Center, Asek Reynaldo Antonio Laguda, Asek Armando Ruiz, Yusek Alberto Muyot, Executive Director Graciela Caton, National Book Development Board, Executive Director Delia Hernandez, National Council for Children's Television, Director Jeremy Barnes, National Museum, and Executive Director Emmanuel Nadera Jr., Philippine High School for the Arts. Thank you.
Just remind me later, I'll ask the National Book Development Board about the book fair and why they had to come to me for assistance, why you did not place it in your budget for support for this year, because it was too late, but we were able to help them anyway through creativity in finding those who could help. Just remind me to ask you about that later. Yes. May we proceed with the budget of Secretary Luis Tro, and then I will give the floor to Senator Cayetano. She requested for this time, and I made this time so that she could ask the questions as chairman of the Standing Committee on Education. But first, you present your budget. Thank you. Good.
Thank you very
Yes,
much,
okay.
Senator Laura and Senator Pia, and then the members of the executive team of DepEd and our attached agencies. With the permission of the chair, may I go to just a few slides of the, I think we submitted 54 slides, Your Honors. I think the more relevant ones, I'd wish to start with slide number 8, just to give you the perspective of the increase in the budget. Your Honors, the Department of Education has been very, very grateful for the increase in its budget for the past 5-6 years. No? And if you will notice, I think the 15th and 16th Senate would have been recorded in history as one of the most supportive of education. If you just look at the increase in the budget, you realize that for the 2015, our current year's budget, our total of 367 billion is actually recorded an increase of 110% since 2009. And if we get our approval for the 2016 budget, this would have been the highest increase ever at 148% since 2009. That's not just overall. You'll notice in the next slide that on a per student support, if you just divide the total amount to the number of students enrolled with DepEd, the actual increase of 9,000 subsidy per student per year has increased to 17,800 by this year's budget, recording at least 97.3% increase since 2009. And with the 2016 budget, that would have gone to close to 20,000 per student per year at 119% increase. The Aquino administration, with the support of the 15th and 16th Senate Congress, has allowed us to really push for the support to education. In the next slide, we'd want to look at the actual budget presentation for 2016, skipping the other DepEd slides, and I'll ask ASEC Mandy Ruiz to just give us the highlights.
Madam Chair, if you may. Thank you. Your Honors, we are submitting for your favorable consideration our proposed budget for fiscal year 2016 in the sum of 433.5 billion pesos, broken down as follows. DepEd proper, 431.2 billion. Philippine High School for the Arts, 80.7 billion pesos. Million pesos, sorry. National Council for Children's Television, 4.2 million pesos. National Book Development Board, 39.4 million pesos. National Museum, 1.34 billion pesos. And Early Childhood Care and Development Council, 827.4 million, or a total of 433.5 billion pesos. As mentioned earlier by our Secretary, Brother Amin, this level is 100% increase, 110% increase from the 2009 budget level. The slide on the screen shows the summary and comparison of the 2015 budgets and the proposed budgets of the DepEd proper and its attached agencies. The total obligations of 367 billion pesos in 2015 and 433 billion pesos in 2016 comprise regular appropriations, automatic appropriations for the retirement and life insurance premiums being remitted to GSIS, and budgets lodged under the Miscellaneous Personal Benefits Fund. These do not include other fund sources as the international commitments Fund and the Pension and Gratuity Fund. Otherwise, the DepEd budget would be 367 billion pesos in 2015 and 435 billion pesos in 2016. As you may note, Your Honors, there is a decrease in the budgets of the Philippine High School for the Arts and the National Museum, but this is because there were one-time capital expenditures or non-recurring costs included in the 2015 budget as spending for senior high school for the Philippine High School for the Arts and the rehabilitation of cultural properties affected by the Bohol earthquake and Typhoon Yolanda and the acquisition of archaeological sites for the National Museum. The 18.2% increase in DepEd proper budget for 2016 is largely due to new spending for the implementation of the senior high school program starting June 2016. The next slide shows the increase in the budget of DepEd proper, which is driven by the increases in MOE and capital outlay budgets. Since 2009, the department's budget has moved from being driven by personal services to being more developmental with greater emphasis on programs and projects that will enable schools to operate more efficiently and effectively. In 2016, the share of personal services of the total budget is 64% from 80% in 2009. The significant increase in MOE and capital outlay is largely due to new spending for the senior high school program, which is a new level in basic education that has been enacted into law in 2013 under the Enhanced Basic Education Act. Additional MOE, facilities, and equipment are being proposed for the almost 5,800 schools that will offer the senior high school program starting June 2016. Apart from this, there are also expansions in school MOE budgets and school-based feeding program for the K-10. Next slide. This slide shows the summary and comparison of the 2015 DepEd budget, DepEd proper budget only, and the 2016 proposed budget. There is a significant increase in DepEd proper budget of 28%, but is largely due to the fact that in 2016, funds previously lodged under the special purpose funds, specifically the miscellaneous personal benefits fund, are now included in the department's regular or built-in budget. This also explains the reduction of 98% in special purpose fund in 2016. The funds retained in under MPBF pertain to budgets for the creation and filling up of non-school positions and creation of superintendent positions lodged under the DepEd Central Office. The next slide. The next slide shows the comparison and summary of DepEd proper's 2015 budget and proposed 2016 budget based on expenditure program. Programs comprise 95% of the DepEd proper's 2016 budget pertaining to funds allocated for the general administration and support operations, and operations. There are no funds proposed for locally funded projects. While in 2015, we have the 231 million budget, which pertains to the budget for the social component of the normalization program or the provision of alternative learning system programs to rebel returnees. As earlier mentioned, the budget for the filling up and creation of new positions is now lodged under programs in the 2016 DepEd specific budget. Thus, the funds under MPBF were reduced. This now refers only to budgets intended for the filling up and creation of non-school positions lodged under the DepEd Central Office. The next slide shows the summary of the budget of DepEd by major final output. There are the budget structure of DepEd under operations comprises 3 MFOs, major final outputs. MFO1, the Basic Education Policy Services, MFO2, Basic Education Services, and MFO3, Regulatory and Development Services for Private Schools. So the MFO1 pertaining to Basic Education Policy Services, which has an allocation of 339.8 million pesos, is for the operational requirement or administrative overhead expenses of our different bureaus, centers, and services for policy formulation and standards setting. For MFO2, Major Final Output 2, termed as or the so-called Basic Education Services, has a budget of 364,625,129,000, or 88.9% of the total DepEd budget, which the bulk of this budget under MFO2 comprises the school MOE for all elementary schools, junior high school, and senior high school, including capital outlays and payment of existing personnel complement. And under this MFO, we are proposing for the creation of 62,320 teacher items, 17,371 related teaching and non-teaching positions. We are proposing for the construction of 43,000 classrooms and repair of 20,000 classrooms. And we are planning to purchase 103.3 million textbooks and procurement of 6,144 computer packages, and also the procurement of 1,874 science and math equipment packages. Under MFO3, is for regulatory and development services for private schools, or the GASPE, government assistance to teachers and students in government assistance to students and teachers in private education, which has a budget of 21.2 billion pesos, and this is for funding of 1 million slots for education service contracting, and around 700,000 slots for the senior high school voucher system. And also, aside from the operations, there are also budgets for the general administration support services and support to operation projects, which is a total of 23.8 billion pesos. The general administration and support services is for the overhead expenditures of admin offices in the DepEd, from the central office to the division offices and schools, for the non-teaching staff of the schools. And under support operations, these are some activities that supports the operations, citing, for example, the teachers training is included here. Around 127,909 teachers will be trained during summer of next year. And also the feeding program is lodged in this budget, support operations. 1,918,464 beneficiaries for the school-based feeding program. That's the last slide for the budget.
Your Honors, let me take this opportunity to thank the 15th and 16th Congress. Just to review the most important, next slide, the most important reforms in education has been legislated via the Kindergarten Act, Early Years Act, and Enhanced Basic Education Act, known as K-12. And I think the 15th Congress would have lodged the most important reforms, institutionalizing a seamless educational program, beginning with the early years all the way to at least 18 years old. The other key legislation are on sports, Palarong Pambansa, as well as Student Athletes Protection Act in the 16th Congress. We continue to support scholarships, both with the Scholar ng Bayan Act and the Fast Track Science and Technology Scholarship Act. The legislation has allowed us to focus also on rural schools, as well as providing more access through open distance learning, open high school, labdarization, and to ensure that it is connected with industry, the Entrepreneurship Act, as well as protection of children, anti-bullying. I think if history is written, we will be able to look back at the 15th and 16th Congress and say that the most important reforms protecting children and learners has been enacted by these two Congresses, with special support from Senator Laura and Senator Pia, with most, if not all, of these key legislation. we request in the next slide, last slide actually, your support for last two hirit ng DepEd po. Yung pumasa na po sa lower house, yung ESRA, allowing teachers to voluntarily choose election duties, and it will be a very, very big help to DepEd if the summary titling of real properties is signed into law, because that will at least initially at least 12 to 15,000 school sites would be regularized and be given an official document as a school site. Your Honors, thank you for the support you've been given the past two Congresses. The department is most grateful to your.
Thank you, Secretary. Just on that last proposed measure, is there already a proposed measure in both houses for the titling? You mean 12,000 of these schools don't belong to DepEd? You could actually be squatting on private land?
Yeah.
Or is it government land of other?
It is a combination. I'll ask Yusek Albert Muya to please give us the details.
And this was not done in previous Congresses?
No, Your Honor.
No. Maybe because at the time you did not have a database of what you actually owned or not?
It was done, Your Honor, but piecemeal, because the President had to sign each of those individually. If I may...
And with this one measure, everything will be owned by DepEd?
Yes, Your Honor.
There is no problem with regards to land owned by the private sector in certain DepEd schools? I'm just surprised that it's 12,000 schools. Did you mention that? No, 12,000 sites.
May I request
Yes,
Yusek Albert Muyat?
Good afternoon, Your Honors. Madam Chair, actually DepEd has 46,000 school sites, of which very few have been titled. We have adopted two tracks in the titling of the untitled school sites. The first one, which we worked out with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, is through an expedited system of issuance of special patents, which shall be issued not by the President, as is now the case, but by the Provincial Environment and Natural Resources officers. So this will be done through the guidelines issued by the DNR earlier this year pursuant to the Residential Patents Law. So we hope to cover about 15,000 through the special patents. The others, Your Honor, will be covered by this proposal, which has gone through the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources for this Congress, and it's soon to be reported out of the committee. A consolidated bill has already been worked out by the technical working group. The idea, Your Honor, is that school sites which are currently utilized by DepEd, whether even if they're owned by private or by the LGUs, because many school sites are owned by the LGUs, will now be subject to a summary proceeding where they can be expropriated by government, subject to the payment of just compensation. So if this law is passed, Your Honor, in the subsequent budgets of DepEd under the GAA, there would need to be inserted amounts for the compensation for those lands which had been summarily transferred to DepEd.
That would be substantial if it's
Yes, Your Honor.
12,000.
That would
Yes.
be more than 12,000 school sites, Your Honor.
The 1/4 of your present school sites, no?
More than 1/4, Your Honor.
Surprised to find out ganun kalaki ang hindi pala sa inyo. Yes. Before we proceed with many questions regarding your budget, Pia, would you want to ask the questions on K-12? I will yield to you, then I'll ask my questions later. I hope to finish it by 3. If not, we will have a second hearing.
Good afternoon, Secretary. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Well, I've always been supportive of DepEd, but I do have clarificatory questions that either for my better understanding, or if my understanding is correct and there are rooms for improvement, for the better understanding of the legislators, so that we can also try to help you achieve those goals. Most of these are not new. These are concerns that I've raised over the years. Just a clarification. I know TESDA is not a part of this hearing, but an ongoing concern is that if when our K to 12, the senior high school is rolled out, and a student chooses the Tech Voc track, is it already very clearly defined what these tracks are compared to what are those programs that will be offered as a post-high school Tech Voc continuing education? I mentioned this in terms of, I've done my own research, I've visited so many similar senior high school programs in different countries, and there it is very clearly defined. Here, maybe because it is new to us, it is not clearly defined, or I do not know, because there's still a lot of discussions that, napapag-aralan naman sa TESDA ng 6 na buwan yan tapos ngayon, 2 years nila pag-aaralan yan. So, there is a way, it's being done in other countries. Where are we there? That's what I need to know. There's so many ways to go, it's very technical, I don't know it. My question is simply, is it already very clear to us that there's no duplication? When you finish this, hanggang ditong level ka sa electrical whatever. And then you go further for 2 to 3 years in a polytechnic, college, or university, and you can get something else. Is that very clear?
Your Honor, with the concurrence of the Chair, may I request Yusek Dina?
Okay, sure.
Good afternoon. Hi. The K-12 sort of limits itself until NC2, which is the parang it's a competency certificate, national certificate
Okay.
that is issued by TESDA.
Okay.
We limit ourselves there with the exception of a few schools that are actually called Tech Voc schools.
Okay.
And they've been trade schools for a long time already, and some of them actually have an NC3.
Okay.
TESDA will continue to offer NC1 onwards until their training TM. Trainer's methodology. So they'll continue to offer NC 1, 2, 3, 4 until trainer's methodology, because their main students will be those who want to change career
Of course, yes.
or out of high school. So that's really the distinction.
Okay, so your level is NC2. 2. So my question now is, with all the tracks, will all the so basically, are you prepared to roll out all the different tracks all over the country by province-wide? How does it look? Do you have a map here that will at least show us that in every province there are 2, 3, 4 Tech Voc tracks, there are 2, 3, 4 academic tracks, and then in what way are we prepared to absorb the students? Are there dormitories waiting for them? Do they actually get a choice? Can they go anywhere? Again, I ask this question because being a democracy, we don't, one of my recent visits was also Singapore, and there, it is very clear cut to them that we will only have 30 more doctors this year. So, or 8 years from now. So this year, they will only accept maybe 33 because there's a 10%. That's how specific they are. And I know Filipinos will not accept that. But having said that, how do you now project how many will be servicing our manufacturing sector? How many will be meeting the needs of our science and technology? How are we doing this?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll ask them to show one sample of the Albay division because it's a little too complex to do it nationwide. What we've done, Your Honor, in the past 2 years is to actually do wide consultations, beginning with students' choices, and then dialoguing that with what their parents choose, and usually there's a conflict there.
Yes.
But we, our schools try to bring those two together. And then on a post-school level, they were able to identify initially the list of tracks and specializations for those schools. No? But this was also checked, vetted with local industry or the chambers of commerce to check whether the choices of students and parents are consistent with the needs of industry or whether there are actual jobs and opportunities for entrepreneurial openings for them. No? That, Your Honor, is the initial listing that we, the sample here, all divisions did this, but that is an initial listing. What we're doing this year, Your Honor, is actually doing a career guidance nationwide per school, and they're actually reviewing this list so that we're asking them to do almost like a simulation of their enrollment. As to your question of, we gave them the list of all the public schools as well as non-DepEd schools that will be offering the tracks and specializations. The students are allowed to make their choices, and we limited that to top 2 preferences. And by the end of October, we should be collating all these so that we will have a nationwide listing of a second preference for students, which will be the basis for the more immediate planning on a per school. So ultimately, if your question is, will the students make the choice? Yes. Will they be guided? Yes, by the guidance counselor, career, in terms of career, but also that will, the parameters, Your Honor, will be limited to what is available on the municipality level and or the division.
In terms of job or in terms of the educational?
Senior high school openings, because as in this slide sample, each division, the information will be given to the students in terms of the schools, how far they are from the current school where they are enrolled, what are the tracks and specializations that or streams that they will be offering, and their absorptive capacity. So that information will be given to the students. They will make the initial first preference, second preference choices, and then we collate that, Your Honor.
Because this is a hearing for the Department of Education, and obviously that is your mandate to improve the quality of education, I'm assuming you also track, I was just recently in the UP board meeting, and we were tracking, it was a special board meeting, and we were tracking the ranking of UP and other SUC, well, other universities in the whole country, and what we could do about it. No, that's part of UP's mandate. My question is, that is supposed to be something you are tracking as well, and to achieve that, would it be correct for me to assume that number one, you would easily have a database of the top 10 graduates of all the high schools, and then you have a way of providing them access to the STEM and academic tracks, because otherwise our whole K-12 system will fall flat on our face if, you know, we now designate these areas that are offering it, and we can't bring the best of the best there. Having said that, and everybody else, where they should go based on their talents. I don't necessarily believe it should be student-based, although there should be, of course, consultation. But at the end of the day, they're kids, they need guidance, and if we want to move forward, we have to make very clear what the demands of the country is. So that's my question, because in terms of dorms, basically dorms, I think that would be a concern all over the country.
Two quick points, Your Honor. The historical basis for the numbers are really the NCAE, which DepEd has been doing over the past years. So at the very least, we have numbers there to tell us what are the preferences and the capacities of the students. We also have a listing, Your Honor, of the top. Most of these are really science schools within DepEd, and there are historical data about their NAT scores, etc., that tell us what are the top DepEd schools, public schools at least, that are able to produce the types of students who will perform well if they do the different tracks in college, most specifically the science, math, and all the professional degrees. So that has been further supported by the Scholar ng Bayan Act, which allows us with more to collate more recent data on the top students per school, and in our last data on the academic track, specifically for grade 10 now, the numbers, Your Honor, would be at around 48% of the population. So we try to connect this with the needs of the OST is a list of the necessary degrees for national development, and we try to align those with what the country needs and what the universities are actually offering. So, but this is, we let admit, this is the first time we will be doing this, connecting our grade 10 graduates, but eventually grade 12 also, to the universities. We don't have historical there. No? The historical numbers are really very grim, because less than 50% of grade 10 graduates actually even attempt to go to the universities. So the real target of the K-12 program is to make sure that this, we push them to at the very least finish grade 12, but even among the grade 12, our current data tells us around 48% to 50% will eventually take the a university degree, Your Honor. Start the university.
48% of your senior high graduates.
That's right. At least those in the academic track. You'll be happy to note, Your Honor, that even those that choose the Tech Voc track, the sports as well as the arts track, are eligible for college.
Yeah, of course.
So the academic track, at the very least, we have 48% there. But even those who do the other three tracks are eligible to college, and we will support them and encourage them to do so if that is part of the plan.
I've always understood the goal to be that you graduate senior high competent enough to do something significant with your life. So for example, sports, which is my area of interest, you could already be some kind of trainer or, to that effect. Obviously, if you wanted to be a good college coach or whatever, then you go to school. So the same thing, correct? So I have no problem with that vision. It's more of ensuring that they have the access to go to these specialized schools, which is a problem that I'm sure you are aware of, especially in the areas where everything is so far apart. If I'm not mistaken, you showed me the Bicol, the Albay, what do you call this, division. But yeah, the challenge is for you to roll out this all over the country. And are we fairly comfortable with that? Because this budget is for next June, and around April or May we'll start having, getting all the feedback about saan pupuntang anak ko and all that. So that's.
Your Honor, the every division actually has that same Albay sample, but we allow them to do their own little template. But when we do the October nationwide listing, it will be per division and closer to, we hope, the reality in June 2016. Because by the nature of students, we did the initial consultation like 2 years ago when they were in grade 8. No? So we figured they changed their minds, and maybe their parents have changed their minds too. So we're actually doing this as the pre-registration almost for 2016. The other difference is in this month's career guidance for senior high school, we already listed the schools that will be offering senior high schools in their area. That was not available 2 years ago. So now the choice is more immediate and more palpable because they know exactly those schools. And thankfully, some of those schools have done their own school fairs so that they were able to actually visit the campuses.
One more point on this subject matter. I think the way that we can really maximize the intent of the Scholar ng Bayan is that if you can really make available the best senior high schools to the best not graduating, but the best 10th grade 10th grade students, no? Because if you say, okay lang, kasi there's a in every municipality, there's going to be any track they can proceed, but you didn't give them that best shot to then go to the best university in the city. So if you could also look into that, and that's where I think, this is taking it a step further. This is not saying they have a school to go to, you know, okay na yan, no? It's really saying, like, we'll really start pulling out the best, including, sadly, probably the need for them to dorm, if you really want to put them in the best. And the good news there is, well, they're not 14, they're probably 16. So, no, the 10th graders. The 10th graders, if you want them to go to the best senior high that will, you know, if you're looking at your STEM, because, you know, they'll have access, but if they don't go to the best senior high in that area, it's another thing to say meron, it's another thing to say let's pull the best and put it in the city science and technology high school or whatever. And that goes for every other talent, that they'll have that access. Let me move to another point. Thank you. These are just very general concerns that I continue to have. In terms of the hiring of additional teachers, I'll allow you to tell us where we are there. Are we fully set? Do we have qualified teachers for those very specific tracks? And then my bigger problem is, this was highlighted by the recent visit of the Thai Prime Minister, wherein we proudly announced that they want 4,000 teachers from us. And I'm like, why are we proud of that? I mean, you know, if we were rolling them out as if they were biscuits, then maybe you're fine. But you know, these are our very these are very, very demandable commodity, and I don't think our needs are met as yet. And I did not hear any intelligent response on that issue. So I wanted to be sure, like, the Department of Trade doesn't roll out a plan not to limit the choices of our teachers, but without consulting DepEd on where are we going with this. And I may have mentioned this in a previous hearing, but in the committee that I used to chair, which is the Committee on Health, we had exactly the same problem with nurses. So I just want to be sure that we're very much aware of this and what our long-term solutions are.
Yes, Your Honor. First, the hiring of teachers, we're at 77%, but that was like a month ago. So we should be very close to 100% of the newly created the teacher items for this year. No? Part of the little delay happened because we put the cutoff at 70%, and those that fell below the cutoff, we were pressured to kind of bring it down, but the department stuck to 70% because we didn't want to bring down the quality. But we were able to, I think, address that, and we should be able to hire the teachers this year.
They are available. I mean, it's just a matter of going through within the standard that you were saying.
Yes, in our meeting, actually this arose as a suggestion in the House budget hearings. We're working with the Civil Service Commission to allow us to hire on a provisional basis teachers who do not meet the cutoff. No? Most of these, Your Honor, are hindi naman masyadong malayo. Pagka 50, hindi na po yan. Yung mga a few 65 to 70 lang. No? I thought it was a good proposal to hire provisionally, and then during which period DepEd provides those newly hired on a provisional basis with support and or additional training, so that they still have to meet the 70, after which they may be permanently hired. No? So that's the only a new provision that we're working on. But the number of teachers are there, definitely. For senior high school in particular, next year, part of the law allows us to actually hire during the transition period from among the faculty teaching in the universities now. No? So there's a separate provision for that. This year, as we do the early registration for students, we're also doing an online application for potential teachers for grade 11. And that will give us the numbers. This is the first time we're doing this, and that's 9 months down the road. We will have a more definite number and list of a pool from which DepEd could tap teachers per specialization, and that's the more complicated part. That's why we had to start very much earlier. No? On the issue of Filipino teachers, I'll have to tell you, Your Honor, that Filipino teachers are really prized abroad, more specifically in ASEAN, especially because they like our English. I know you have many issues about our education system dealing with English, but at this stage, our English teachers are still very much prized. My good news is that at least 100 of overseas Filipinos have actually been absorbed by DepEd back in the teaching force. So there is also that return movement from among overseas Filipinos. In fact, we have around 7 countries abroad where PRC does our licensure for teachers, because there are such requests made in at least 7 cities abroad where Filipinos who have been working, some of them as domestics, but left as teachers, would want to come back. But to assure you, the department's bilateral agreements with our ASEAN countries, recognizing that there is a pool now for teachers, and some of them give high premium, is to work on a bilateral that does not contribute to brain drain. So what we're doing is a short-term, at most, bilateral, where they also have to send Thai teachers. And if we do send English teachers to, let's say, Thailand, it is for a specific period of time, maximum of, let's say, 2 years. And part of it is a cultural exchange where they also bring in almost like Filipino ambassadors to the Thai nationals as part of, folded under the ASEAN teacher exchange program. So it's not so much more about work, it's really more about Thai teachers coming here, learning about the Philippines, but Filipino teachers going there with, aside from English, other cultural exchanges.
But what will the Thai teachers, how can they teach here? Do they speak English? Or they will just be here?
Some of them actually
No,
just
that's
need
That's my whole concern. The exchange for them is they get these English-speaking teachers to teach the Thai English. What do we get? We get a cultural exchange program. Is that a fair exchange? What to me is fairer, because I'm not about to prevent any Filipino from doing what they want to do, is to really ask them, invest in our education system, put up schools, help train, help fund the education of our other teachers to get their master's degrees. Because just that, to me, Secretary, is just a cultural exchange for our teachers, which is not worth the loss of those teachers to us.
Is this part of the AEC? Because by December of this year, we will open up and the ASEAN Economic Community, but is the, I know that exchange of labor, professionals will be part of the AEC. Is the exchange of teacher training, this cultural exchange of teachers, part of the ASEAN Economic Community agreement?
Yes, Your Honor, but even prior to that, there are actually several bilaterals among the ASEAN countries. But I think that will be folded up together under the ASEAN AEC. No? But just to give you comfort, Your Honors, it is not a major program of the department. If I just give you numbers, maximum like 100 teachers is already at any one time out, for example, with Thailand. That's just 1/2 of all the divisions, so 1 teacher per division. So hindi naman, the impact will not be that big.
But if you don't handle it with DTI, there's nothing that prevents them from recruiting directly. And that's where my problem lies. It is really an issue for Department of Trade, and I have been pushing years ago on a human resource management council or something. That's where you would come in and say, unfortunately, I have to get involved because if it was just me, which is what you're saying, 100 lang yan, great, diba? It is a nice cultural exchange, but they want more eh. So that's my problem. You'll have this official DepEd program, which is nice and clear-cut, 100, and then you'll have this migration, which is unregulated, which we can't regulate their leaving, but it didn't get the benefit of your input and coming up with a program that would be self-sustaining. That's where I would like DepEd to step in and say, we have to get involved. If you're going to take 4,000 anyway, then it might as well be under our auspices where we can also ask for something substantial in return.
Senator, if I be allowed to just say off-the-cuff remarks, the part of the challenge in ASEAN is education is, I think, under the meetings on trade, and education is not. We're not even actually represented there. I agree with you fully. Maybe you could help us bring that input, because I think at least our position is education should not just be part of the trade discussions.
Did I get it correctly that you were not part of the discussions on the AEC?
No, just
No?
on the, we're part of that on different levels, Your Honor. There is actually an ASEAN University Network, which is a smaller group that works with AEC. But I'm just mentioning that the point of view of many of the ASEAN countries is that, and even of the ASEAN Secretariat, is that education is really lodged under trade discussions, because I don't know for what, because that is one area. And educators have actually commented on that on the ASEAN level, saying that no, in fact, education should not be just discussed from the point of view of monetary or labor issues.
It's not a commodity.
Yes.
Education is not a commodity. With that suggestion, Secretary, we will suggest to both the DTI and the Department of Foreign Affairs, which is taking its lead into our accession into the AEC this December. And we know very well that on January 1, we don't wake up and we're part of the AEC. It's a continuing agreement which will last for, but these are mostly on tariffs. So education should not be lodged under DTI, clearly. So I would appreciate it if someone from the DepEd could be present when we discuss the budget of the DFA, so that that can be brought up, so that the DepEd can be represented in the DFA discussions on the ASEAN Economic Community, assuming that indeed education is lodged under trade. So we see the impact of the opening of ASEAN countries because of the AEC. And you should have a stronger voice there, indeed.
Honorable, I request Yusek Albert.
Thank you, Your Honors. Your Honors, actually, the department is a member of the ASEAN socio-cultural community. Education is lodged in that cluster, and that is led by the Department of Social Welfare and Development. So it looks into the human development component. Among the members, of course, are Department of Labor, TESDA, CHED, okay, together with the cultural agencies. The focus there, Your Honor, is really to foster complete human development within the ASEAN region. So training and education is a very, very important component thereof. If there are any bilateral agreements between the different ASEAN countries, it's actually lodged in that context. Improvement of education and promotion of culture within the ASEAN region. The matter, Your Honors, of teachers working in other countries is examined in the context of the free flow of labor. But that presupposes that there are mutual recognition agreements between the different countries. And at this point in time, with regards teachers, we still don't have, because some countries don't have licensure exams, we have licensure exams. So that's still something to be worked on. So the fear of an exodus of teachers to other ASEAN countries is, at this point in time, not yet that apparent. It's more of technical, those working the technical fields and those working in professions where there is already mutual recognition where we can expect after December 2015 the movement of highly skilled workers from one country to the other. In relation, Your Honors, to the bilateral agreement with Thailand, of which you were also part in the discussions at the level of the senior officials, this basically has to do with the Philippines helping Thailand develop its internal capacity for its teachers to teach in English, English being the lingua franca of the ASEAN. So our teachers will not really be recruited to teach for a long, long time in primary schools or secondary schools in Thailand, but rather they will be there for the purpose of developing programs and teaching for no more than 2 years in universities, where those in the those aspiring to be teachers are now enrolled in and are being trained. Some of those who had gone had actually come back already after the completion of their short-term contracts. The countries, Your Honors, where we've had a lot of Filipino teachers teaching the primary and secondary level would be countries like Brunei, for instance, where the private education sector is basically manned by Filipino teachers. But that's a completely different need that is sought to be addressed, because they really have no teachers in that particular country. But as far as Thailand is concerned, there is no fear of an exodus of a large number of teachers. Moreover, Your Honor, under this bilateral agreement, there is also a safety valve, in the sense that it will be the department and the CHED who will be sending the teachers, and this will be partly at the expense of the governments also, because the governments who receive would also need to provide for insurance and other protection for the teachers who are there, and this would really constitute a big expense on the receiving countries. So that, in a way, effectively limits the number of teachers who can be covered or accommodated under that particular exchange. Thank you, Your Honor.
On that note, the fact that the Premier would say that they need 4,000 means they need 4,000, and it means that they will, if they will try to find a way to fund the 4,000. So my point is, take note of the fact that they need it and they will find a way to get it, and if we will provide them, they will take it from us. And my point is, negotiate to the best of our ability so that we get something in return beyond the cultural exchange. That's what I'm saying. Did you wanna?
Well, yes, Your Honor. I'm also the senior official for education for the Philippines for ASEAN, and I will ensure that indeed there is no mass exodus of teachers, and that if there is, let's say, that demand from Thailand, it be programmed in a way that it will not affect the hiring of teachers by the DepEd and by private schools in the Philippines. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, thank you. On that note, another point which I have made very clear was my concern about the inconsistency with our mother tongue policy and our objective of being world class or rank highly. Case in point is Singapore. No doubt about it, they're at the top in terms of the education system. The policy they adopted, and I was actually there recently, as I'm sure you may have somebody in your team who has studied all the different programs abroad, but they clearly made a decision, despite the different ethnic groups that they had, that their language of instruction would be English, and the mother tongue would actually be the second language. That is because their vision is very clear: to be competent in business, to be able to equip their workforce with a language that they can communicate with internationally. So again, I have no problem promoting the Filipino language and promoting all the dialects. In fact, in UP, we were saying we should have more programs on the languages within ASEAN. I'm all for that. But I feel that there is still a disjoint between our promoting the mother tongue at a level of it being the primary language, and then expecting us to still be the go-to country 20, 30 years from now, when clearly all the other countries are trying to learn English from us, And we have actually shifted. You can tell that we've shifted because it is a natural television, and the expert is here, my colleague Senator Loren. They will provide what we demand, no? Some say television should be the one to set the pace, but they also are very big on testing the market. And we've shifted from English. It used to be English shows, it used to be English dramas, it used to be English news. Now everything is Filipino. Am I against it? I'm not. But that was the simplest way for people to learn English. So to shift to all that, you can now actually say that the majority of people are English speaking. You go to Google and it will automatically, if you're in the Philippines, ask you if you want to do your Googling in Filipino. So I'm just saying, I just want to be sure that our generation of policymakers are very much aware of what we are handing to the next generation of policymakers. That we've shifted from my generation, some of you are my age, some of you are older, a little bit younger, an English-speaking generation to a non-English-speaking generation. I've always felt strongly about that, and I will always take it up during the budget. Final note is, I was in the Mountain Province. I went to an area which you cannot access by car. You can only be there on there by foot. And as you probably know, in terms of regional profiling, they speak very good English in that area. And they were saying, sana naman po wag nilang gawing mother tongue kasi hindi namin alam kung paano namin ituturo beyond yung conversational and history subjects in the mother tongue. Wala ho kaming ganung mga, we don't have those words, no? So I said, I don't think so naman, I told them. But just to relate to you some concerns also. So I leave that with you. I think we have a difference in opinion, Mr. Secretary, on how this is being used, but it's still a concern that I will always bring up.
Thank you, Your Honor. The only thing I'll add is we will make sure, Your Honor, that the mother tongue will not sacrifice the way they speak Filipino as national language, English as part of the medium of instruction when they reach grade 4, but also a third international language. In fact, as early as grade 1, we have an English subject, and you'll notice that in areas where children actually speak in English, because there are families that speak in English, we advocate that they use that as mother tongue because that's first language. That's what. So there is no bias towards one or the other.
You have this big divide now between the socioeconomic classes. No, usually. I know that. I mean, I've seen it. Usually they'll say if you're from this part of the country or this part of the province, the cities, mother tongue nyo would be English. No? And it drives that gap even further. It does.
Our early, because we're trying to do early assessment of how our students are doing with respect to the mother tongue, English, and Filipino. And maybe I'll ask Yusek Dina to give us some early reports telling us at least that the pioneers are not sacrificing. We're not sacrificing their English.
Just for the record, how many indigenous languages are being utilized or taught by the DepEd?
Currently, there are 19 of the 177.
Correct. And just for the record, so that we're accurate, these are indigenous languages. They are not dialects.
No, they
Yes,
are
they're
languages.
Okay, so that we're accurate. Of these 100 plus languages, we are using 19.
19, Your Honor.
Okay, clear. Please proceed, Yusek Dina.
Thank you. On page, slide number 16 would be the right slide, right? We began the use of the local languages in school in 2012, grade 1. And we had our recent assessment of language literacy for grade 3. The end result at 2014 is that we are seeing a steady increase in competencies for Filipino and English. So for example, 70.2% mean percentage score in Filipino, and then 63.8 in English for 2014, which are a bit higher than the one in 2013. It does take a little time to take root, these programs to take root. If we use the way we understand how children learn to read and how languages interact with each other, I think the next two slides will show us a little bit. It's a little bit long, these lines, but what it's showing is that the orange line is really buttressing the green line, meaning in the 19 languages, including Filipino and English, so that would be 21 languages. What you would have is that listening comprehension is actually supporting the green line. The green line is actually pulling the orange line, which is the reading comprehension. And this is how it is at with young children. The listening is developing faster than the reading. And we can see that children are actually reading in Akyanon, in Bicol, in Hiligaynon, and this is really good data because it's showing us that they are reading in a language that they know. Now, the question on the cross-linguistic transfer, Akyanon, in Bicol, in Hiligaynon, and this is really good data because it's showing us that they are reading in a language that they know. Now, the question on the cross-linguistic transfer from these languages in the hometowns to English and Filipino. The next slide shows us the first correlation study that we've ever done on the interaction between the languages. Let me just explain a little that in the first column of overall raw score, you will find, syempre English is in perfect correlation with itself. The scores of English predict the scores of, or are correlated with the scores of English. But the scores of English are highly correlated also with the scores of Filipino at 0.79 or almost 0.8. This is driven by the huge sample size because this is all the children in grade 3. When you look now at its relationship of English with the mother tongue performance, and the reason that this is lower is because there are smaller population sizes per language, because correlations are driven by sample sizes. So the mother tongue correlation of English is almost 0.4, 0.35. And this means that kids who are reading very well in mother tongue are also reading well in English. And what we're hoping to push is that we continue to increase that. So the basis of...
Which school is that? And which
Ma'am, this is national
language?
data po.
National.
National data.
But which is a model school that teaches mother tongue in which indigenous language that also performs well in English?
Well, based on this correlation, what we will find is that those who are good readers, let's say in Hiligaynon, will probably be good readers in English and Filipino as well. That's what it means. I don't have the data at the moment of breaking down, for example, instead of a mother tongue overall score, let's say Surigao-non, and this correlation, we can provide you that, ma'am. But I don't have that at the moment. And then I cannot localize it for you today on a per school basis.
What this is saying is that teaching the mother tongue, as far as this is concerned, is not a deterrent or a hindrance to comprehension, listening, and understanding in English. Is that correct?
What it's showing us, yes, is that it provides a good fundamental for it. However, to further boost the teaching of English and Filipino, we will need to do a lot of interventions on vocabulary and lexicon and lexical development and grammar. But it already removes from the scenario of learning Filipino and English, for example, the understanding of the sound-symbol relationship of alphabet and phonemes. It will remove from that situation learning that what you see on paper can be said out loud, and it makes that reading process friendlier so that they transfer these skills towards other languages, skills that they learn less painfully using their own languages.
In areas where they don't speak any of the 19, what mother tongue do you teach?
That's when we go, instead of mother tongue, to dominant. What is dominant in the local, yeah. But, you know, we find, for example, places that really are requesting, please add our language, please add this. And so part
There's a clamor.
yes, ma'am, okay. There is that clamor.
And this is helpful in institutionalizing and immortalizing in a way the disappearance of languages, which is a challenge to the KWF. Is that correct?
Whether it's
You're
a
helping
challenge to
them
the
in the
KWF, I don't know, right?
That's a challenge to them.
with
Namamatay
regard
na yung
to,
mga languages
Yes, ma'am.
natin na parte ng ating
totoo po yan, no? It helps keep the languages going. But, syempre, from an education standpoint, the first principle of education is you start where children are. That's where they are. That's the language they bring to school. So we start there and then carry them forward to the other languages of education.
How long ago did you start teaching the mother tongue in the 19? And is the time sufficient to be able to gauge that it's really been good for their learning, their comprehension? And can you say it with authority that it does not deter understanding or speaking in English to make these children competitive globally?
What we have as of now is a baseline. This is a baseline that we have now. We'll have to look more into more qualitative work in terms of how children are using the languages in, for example, if they learn the Filipino, are they using it in Araling Panlipunan? If they're learning the English, are they using it now in English? But we're waiting for them to get to grade 4. And so we actually have a design so that we can follow through. We can follow through, and one of the things that we've been using is the early grades reading assessment, and we're trying to triangulate this kind of data so we can establish that. However, there are a lot of reports, and both Brother and I and the rest of DepEd have seen that children are far more participative in school. They recite more because they are comfortable with the language, and whereas classrooms used to be, quiet and so on, there's more interaction now. So the social dimension of early learning is really important because kids who stay in first grade are more likely to stay in grade 2 and are more likely to stay in grade 3. So aside from the cognitive gains, we also have the social gains, and that hopefully this will continue to prevent dropout rates or lower dropout rates at the early grades. A lot of hope in these numbers, and we do need to make this a pattern and improve these numbers. But that chart in itself is very hopeful.
But do you have sufficient materials, collaterals for the 19 languages? DepEd has developed such.
The 19, Your honors, are the ones where we have developed materials. In fact, there are other unofficial languages that divisions or maybe a district may be using. We have not vetted the material, so there are more than 19, but the 19 are the ones where materials are available.
The Philippines is one country in the world which has the most number of languages, or at least in ASEAN, but Indonesia has much, much more, no? They have 700 because of the bigger population as well. Is Indonesia doing this as well? Are they reviving and utilizing their languages?
Yes, ma'am, and Papua New Guinea as well. They're doing that. I don't have their data. Malaysia goes back and forth. Actually, Malaysia has gone back to the use of the local languages as well.
May I know, in the past years, if not decades, why did they not do this?
Ma'am, during the time of Brother Andrew, there was really the Lingua Franca project that was started at the time, and then if you go far at the 40s, 50s, then the Aguilar experiment was also done. But they were done in small pockets. For example, the Brother Andrew's experiment or project was Cebuano, Ilocano, Tagalog, and Hiligaynon? No, not Bicol. 3 or 4. I forget the other one. And it's the first time that we have 19. Yes, and nationwide.
Your Honor, I fully agree with Senator Pia that neither should English and Filipino suffer because of the policy of mother tongue. And that's why, if you notice, the program is actually mother tongue-based multilingual education. And the question really is, the starting point is mother tongue, but no, the target is not that they end in mother tongue. It's really a graduate of the Philippine educational system should be fluent in your first language, Filipino as a national language, English, and hopefully another international language. So that's really the program of the department. And the only difficulty we have now is we were on the early stages. We cannot show you proof, except up to grade 3. We're able to show that at least the baseline, they're not doing very bad.
I wish I was educated in Kinaraya. No, I really wish that I was educated in a DepEd school in Pandan Antique in Kinaraya, so that I would be proficient not only in English and Filipino, Kinaraya, but also in French and Spanish. I mean, yes, children are like sponges. They, and if the social dimension is actually better, then why not? But perhaps it will take you many more years to be able to prove that it has not been a deterrent to understanding and speaking in English and Filipino, and to make our children more globally competitive. In short, we just make sure that it does not suffer, but to promote the use and in fact extend or expand the use and the teaching of indigenous language is culture-based. That's very important. Yes, yes.
I may just add to that. My concern really is that you're introducing English now as a second language, and precisely why we have jobs. Make no mistake, if anyone here contradicts what I say, I'd be happy to see the data. The reasons why we have jobs that are in demand in Asia, in our country, more than any other country in Asia, is because of our proficiency in English. That is all I'm saying. You want to lose that proficiency? Fine. You want to be competent in manufacturing that does not require English communication? No problem. But the thing is, we continue to be concerned about being competitive. Even our OFWs have an advantage. They can't get jobs as nurses in Japan because you need to speak Japanese. But they can get, I'm talking about nurses, they can get jobs in all other English-speaking countries. So that's the point I'm saying. And for them to become English speakers as a second language is a deterrent, and that is the generation that we have now. I don't think we're arguing about that, no? Because when you grow up speaking it, it's a first language just like any other, which is why if you look at Singapore, and I don't think we can say it's a bad model, they chose to make the mother tongue the second language. That's all I'm saying. You're the experts. I'm not. I never said that I am. I'm just sharing what I've seen and my views. On that note, I have a personal experience. I always mention my son. He's 5 now, and he now speaks English, Filipino, and Spanish. Ilonggo to a certain extent, more like when he talks to the dogs, because the people around the house speak Ilonggo and Bisaya, and he hears it, and so he speaks to our dog in Ilonggo as well. But on that note, he is capable of speaking the 3 because of the exposure. So I guess the challenge, Mr. Secretary, is simple, that our teachers continue to continue to be educated themselves, that they can, and we talked about this in other hearings, they can easily shift, so that they can also engage the students in conversation in English and not wait till they are grade 1 or grade 3. That is my problem. That they're suddenly, and again, television before, all the cartoons I watch used to be in English because that's just how it was. Now, even English cartoons are dubbed into Filipino, and of course, so are the Koreans and all the others. So there's no more support for that international competitive language. That's all I'm saying. It is not attuned with our direction in terms of being internationally competitive. It is not. And as I said, if there's anyone who doesn't agree, I'm happy to be corrected. But it's not. We keep gauging ourselves in terms of our English competency, and I don't feel it's reflected in the way we're teaching. So perhaps our teachers can then get, and yun nga yung problema ko, again, to use Thailand, but it's not the Thailand itself. It's not the Thailand incident. It could be any. Even if you take 300 of these competent English-speaking, that's 300 less competent English-speaking teachers who could be speaking 3 languages to these kids, their mother tongue, Filipino, and English. And I know we have a scarcity of these teachers. So that's it. It's just that challenge.
Perhaps we should study why has proficiency in English deteriorated, because that is a given fact. And is it enhanced by this, or is this a deterrent, or is this a separate matter altogether? then let's attack that problem of the English proficiency and the lack of it and improve that aspect of our education.
Ma'am,
Tina.
really the study of language is very very interesting, no? Kasi buhay yan, buhay ang wika. So as society changes, so does language, and I think
It's not just a spoken language, but
Yeah.
even written.
written, yes, and always the being the language of the heart, the language of the home, would therefore be something that we cannot really control, we cannot even legislate that. However, we can actually work on how to develop the target languages of the country or of education. So I am in full agreement that we must retain our edge, but we must also continue to be responsive to communities. As communities put more value in their language, if they put more value in their own literature, because this is also starting to become more active, that there are more writers in Ilocano, more writers in Kapampangan, more writers in Cebuano, and these things are changing at the level of community. And whilst we
The
target...
revival of baybayin, right?
Mahirap po talaga yan, pero yes, ma'am.
Mahirap yun.
Pero parang ganun po. As we target this, we must also be responsive and reflective of what the communities, the changes in the community.
It's not one or the other. We should enhance English proficiency. It's always been an edge, and clearly graduates of recent years have a different quality in terms of the written and spoken form. We can see it. Even magna cum laudes of the State University are a different breed from way back. But we must not neglect the mother tongue, and in fact, perhaps even increase the 19 languages and develop materials for this.
As a matter of fact, English itself is changing.
And even English itself is and increasing its vocabulary. Yes. Proceed. Yes. You have something to contribute.
It's only that I wish to reiterate that if you look at our curriculum for English, just for English, as the student moves from primary to intermediate and all the way to junior and senior high school, our English fluency and levels are really actually better than the old curriculum. So certainly the department sees that part of our mandate is not only to assure our students that they will be competitive in terms of English proficiency, but even better than what we had in the old curriculum.
You know, it's 3:30, and we may not be able to finish the hearing. Would our Department of Education and National Museum mind if we have a second hearing? Because I've not really checked or asked the questions. I can have a private briefing as chairman anytime, but I would want to give our colleagues the chance to join in the hearing. While no one has reserved, I hate to make you come back, Brother Armin, but I simply want to give the others the opportunity to also ask. There's a suggestion for me to just close the hearing and present it in plenary already. We can do that. Then I can just ask you at any time. I can call for you. Kailan yung mga iba eh? Oo. Ha?
I think Senator Binay is asking if
Oo,
meron a second.
meron eh. Oo, may nagtatanong eh. May nagtatanong kasi. Si Nancy. Oo. Can you ask them?
Hindi naman nag-reserve. I mean, like me, di ba? I really asked you to, and I thank the chair for accommodating me. I had something that original schedule. But if they're just asking and did not make a reservation, I think maybe you can offer to also have a briefing with them, just so that all these people here don't have to come back.
Can you ask Nancy? Yun din na hiningi niya sa ALAC, di ba? I also...
What, Madam Chair, I don't have a question. I'll just take note of the presence of Director Barnes for National Museum. Is that okay?
And also, I also wanted to ask questions. So, we need the second hearing because of the book development board, the National Museum. We can't really close it.
Ang National Museum, may tanong ka rin?
No, just exhaust all your questions, and then for the second
Well,
hearing.
I always see him. I have no more questions.
I just wanted to acknowledge it.
No, yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge him and...
I wanted to ask him about art fakes because legislation is present. And the National Museum is the implementing authority to be able to distinguish a work of art, painting or not, any form, into what is forgery, what is art fakery and not. Why does it seem like the National Museum is not equipped with the skill, the equipment, or the personnel to be able to do this with the proliferation of art fakes? There are fake HRs, there are fake Manansalas, Amarsolas, etc. This is, it's a syndicate that's operating within the art world. It's not an elitist issue. It is an issue of culture and heritage and our Filipino soul. And people come to me, not just collectors, but even artists. Ben Cab, and even young artists, they're scared that there's no copyright or patent. How can their original works of art be protected against this syndicate that's proliferating in the industry? Jeremy, how do we do this?
Yes, ma'am. Well, the law you're referring to is Republic Act 9105, passed in 2001. Unfortunately, when I assumed office in 2010, it hadn't been implemented, and the sources of funds and reorganization that were provided for in the law had already long expired. And so we actually have a lot of the equipment we need to start enforcing it according to the prescribed procedures. And but what we need are the actual people who will be dedicated towards doing all of the registration and analysis and the legal work. And I hope you'll be pleased to know that's incorporated into our reorganization plan that is with the Department of Budget and
May I
Management.
kindly request National Museum, Jeremy, and congratulations, I think you were reassigned, renewed or something, right?
Well, yes, reappointed by our board.
Yes, by your board. So congratulations for that. That means you're here for the longer time. You're not retiring along with the administration. So it's very important that you reactivate that division. That you'll have more headaches than what you have big budget. Please ensure that effective immediately you revive that division within the National Museum. If you have the equipment, all you need to do is to hire the expert personnel. There must be somewhere, somehow, some people who could know how to do that. And do you have police powers to be able to prosecute, arrest, prosecute, etc.?
Well, we don't have police powers, but we have quasi-judicial powers.
Powers. So you're saying it was never implemented. There's a law never implemented because not supported by funds.
Yes.
But you have the equipment. You
We've
say
been
funds plantilla position?
Well, our largest constraint is the lack of an organizational capacity for it. We don't.
Are you ready to organize it?
We have a proposal currently pending.
With me?
No, with the Department of Budget and Management.
So these were not submitted in the NEP. There are no plantilla positions. So if the DBM approves that, then you can.
Yes, all we need is the final approval of the Secretary, and
Can you kindly copy furnish me a memo, and if it's doable, even just for basic, maybe not to fully staff that, so that we also show those syndicates that we're moving?
absolutely.
It's very
certainly.
alarming.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen. I agree. We've seen a proliferation of fraud cases.
A story is coming out soon in the Inquirer because, anyway, ang dami-dami. And the artists are really, there's a cry out for help from all these artists.
Yes, I'll be happy to transmit all the pertinent
Oh, we met
information.
about this 5 years ago, remember? With
we-
some collectors, or 3 years ago?
Two,
Because
yeah,
there was an exhibit
of the
fake
HR
art.
of
Yes,
Campo.
okay, but
Yeah.
that's now another thing.
Yes.
Anyway. And we'll have a second hearing, you don't mind, because it's important we can have a private briefing anytime, I can call you, but to be fair to the others, also it's to your advantage, because if I look at your budget, and if there are, kung may kulang, I can even get from somewhere. So it can be official in nature. I know that you arrived early, except that the time is too short. What is this?
Madam Chair, can I just make one statement also? But this is back to DepEd. When-
Yes, please proceed.
Yeah. Oh, is it okay? You mentioned in your presentation, Brother Armin, about the sports programs, no? Palarong Pambansa and my student athletes, my student athletes law, now a law. Just to point out, but it has been handled by ASEC Umali. I just want to be sure that you stay on top of it. All's good on your end, but this can still be recurring. Precisely on the newly passed student athlete law, NOPSEA, based in, I think this is in Region 7, Region 6, refused to let an athlete participate. But I wrote a letter to DepEd, and I believe ASEC Umali has handled it as to whether they have committed to. Can we just be sure of that? I mean, you know, even until the last minute, UAAP, which is not within your jurisdiction, but even UAAP was holding out, and until the law, even after the law was passed, they were still giving me some problems. So I expect there to be some trickle of resistance, but it's a law, and the rules have to be made. This falls under within your jurisdiction until secondary school. So just to let you know, this is very important. But so far, ASEC Umali has handled it. But I wouldn't be surprised if there would be other issues that may come up later on. And then I'll just talk to you separately about my concerns about, it's more really a concern with PSC on their sports programs, but to the extent that some of these programs are under your department, I still feel that it is their expertise. It's just that the students are with you, so I need them really to provide you with the programs, no? That the program shouldn't be coming from your end. So, but I can just talk to you separately. Thank you.
The book board. The Frankfurt Fair, where you are participating, kayo ang lead agency, no?
Actually, it's private sector led,
It's
Your
private
Honor.
sector. The book board is simply supporting it.
Yes, we have allotted already a budget as a subsidy to the
Indonesia
last year.
again. Natalo na naman tayo, no? Indonesia would be the center of attention in the book fair.
Yes, they're the first ASEAN country.
The first ASEAN country. Why could we not claim that? What is the procedure so that the Philippines can be featured in the
It
book fair?
takes at least 5 years in planning and about 50 million pesos, Your Honor.
Which comes first, the 50 million or the 5 years?
I think in our case, the funding would have to be reassured before we get a reservation.
It's a campaign.
Yes, it's a 5-year campaign at least.
And we never even imagined to embark on a campaign.
We have imagined it, Your Honor, but it stays there as of now.
Is it something that is good? Would you recommend that?
Yes, we
Because
are.
Indonesia is the first ASEAN country to be featured in this,
Yes.
the Frankfurt Book Fair.